Okay, evening everyone. This is Walt O'Hara, and I am going to do something a little different. I usually blog about my gaming projects on the third point of Singularity, which is a WordPress blog. But I've been working real hard on Pulp Science Fiction lately in 28, and I got so much stuff done because I've been stuck in this rental house while they're rebuilding my house that I actually think I'm going to try something different and actually film it as opposed to just taking still pictures. Now, what we're starting off with are a few figures from the Rogue Star line from North Star, which I like. They're extremely well detailed and sculpted well in general, and very imaginatively done. They don't really fit very well with the vast bulk of my collection, which we're going to get to in a bit. I'm going to film it in stages because there's a lot of stuff. Most of my pulp stuff is 28mm Gaff DOS or Wargame Supply Dump, and they're a bit beefier and chunkier than what you're looking at here. North Star is more slender and a little tinier. So to compensate for that, I've put them on MDF bases to give them like that critical few more microns of height. What you're looking at in the background there is a War Rocket Galactier, I think Stage 3 ship, which is a real mess. I'm getting to fixing it, but that's outside the scope of what I'm going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to cut over to the various factions I'm working on one at a time. So transition here. I'm going to be running a skirmish game. Probably something I'll come up with myself because I'm really not very satisfied with anything I found yet. I like Rogue Stars out of Osprey, but it doesn't have the sense of humor I was going for. So I was kind of going to go with adapting or modifying something that I've worked with before. Either Adventure Tales or something like that, something pulpy, because this is a very pulp themed game. I might end up just going back to an old standby I've used many times in the past, and that's the Rules with No Name, modified for space fantasy. Anyway, what you're looking at here are some Wargame Supply Dump figures. They're sort of a reptile-based humanoid figure race. I'm going to call them the Slythen. I've got 4 troopers with rifles and carbines, a heavy weapons team, like with a spotter, and it looks like it's some form of sonic gun. And the leader, we'll call him a junior officer. He's got a ceremonial sword, which looks like it's not so ceremonial, and a sidearm of some sort. I went a different direction with these guys. Usually I just paint guns, bolt gun or black. Instead, I went with, sort of envisioning that they had big white plastic-like stocks and some sort of unknown metal for the sonic dish that fires off the sound wave there. It's not necessarily anything we know. They're aliens. Let's play with that idea. I like the kind of like the metallic green that I used. It seems to fit with these guys really well. I like the figures a lot. I might end up buying more of them if I can get the seller or the manufacturer to sell me some. They're not made anymore, which is a terrible tragedy. I sort of discovered this line of figures way too late, like right after he was closing up shop. So that sucks. I ended up buying as much as I could possibly get off of him in one go, and then I've been besieging him to sell me more stuff, and I might end up doubling what you see here because these are great fun, these figures. Okay, we're back, and you'll see that these pointy-headed, cone-head-looking guys with the single eye, they must have terrible depth perception. I'm not sure what I'm going to call them. I was thinking of Ungatonians. I sort of envision these guys as a multi-caste system, because you have these fellows over here, which are clearly from the same race, but of a different skin tone. And then you have kind of the effete ruler type guy, and I made him quite effete with a lavender cape and all. He would be kind of like a high caste officer over basically civilized lower caste troopers who he trusts enough to carry beam weapons. These are not Wargame Supply Dump. These are from both sets of figures, obviously. The lower caste and the higher caste ones are from the Gafdos line, which is I don't remember what Gafdos stands for, but I'll put it in the YouTube notes. Anyway, I like these figures a lot simply because of the single eye and the cone head. That makes them look like really alien-looking aliens. And I like that he's got his own kind of bodyguard here. And I kind of painted him angry. I painted the leader. My friend John Montre did these guys and these guys. I get John to paint for me to help get me out of a bind and meet deadlines. This is a deadline too. We're going to be putting this to use in a gaming camp I do for kids in the summer. And I've got sort of a space station scenario set up. And what I envision for the Ungatonians is Prince Ungulus there that you see with the pinker skin. He has sort of docked at the space station, and he is going to rescue kind of some what he calls enslaved lower caste workers that are doing essentially the equivalent of slave mining on an asteroid that is near the space station, and that's his mission in the multi-faction game that I'm going to be running. And so there'll probably be a guy running these guys, and there'll probably be a guy running these guys, and they'll be, somewhat unlikely allies, because these guys aren't necessarily all that interested in working for these guys again, because they were slaves in the old regime. They're actually getting paid money here, so every side's got a story. Anyway, I'm going to pause a bit, and we're going to get on with the
Okay, what you're looking
phase.
at here are Pulp figures,
the flying rocket men. And, you're probably scratching your head and saying, where do these guys fit in a multi-faction space station skirmish game? Well, I don't see them as being a playable faction, but I think they'd be a really dandy sort of random event. Draw the Joker, and something happens, and it'll probably be a squadron of these rocket men guys flying down the corridor. There's no explanation as to why. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to have them shoot things up on both sides and pass by, and have people stare at them and wonder as they leave. They don't really fit in this time period. They're kind of 40-ish, 1940-ish in their technology. I mean, you can't see very well in this light, but they're like firing 45 automatics and Tommy guns. Well, that's okay. Everything's a little bit of a grain of salt here. Anyway, I love the figures. I absolutely love them, and this will be the first time I've used them in a skirmish game. So they're in the game. They're gonna be. So anyway, again, this is a John Montre paint job. He did a wonderful job of actually putting them on bases. I'm probably going to cover the gray with like a dull coat or a dull bolt gun metal color, just because that seems to be what I'm standardizing on. These are not. I mean, I've been doing sort of a gloss coat on my finishing jobs, not because I like gloss necessarily, but because I think the shiny element adds to the sort of pulpy nature of the game. With that said, that's not done here, but oh well. Anyway, Great job on these from John, and I really like them, and I'm going to use
All right. These are mostly Wargame Supply Dump. Basically, all of the... Whoa, lost my... Sorry. All of these are Wargame Supply Dump's female space pirates. And this over here, wait a minute. That lady there with the mohawk and the impressive fangs is a Ral Partha Shadowrun figure. Some of those are really good for recycling for Pulp Science Fiction. This one in particular I liked. Picked it up at one of our HMGS conventions out of the bulk metal bin, and brought her to life for this game. Now I added this guy in the back. That's Clug Pluton, a figure from the Gafdoz line, and he's obviously modeled to be some sort of bad guy. But I like the fact that he's got kind of these big orky looking jaws too, just like that lady there. So what I'm going to do is Clug is going to be in the game as kind of a random event, but what he is kind of love struck, and he's going to be pursuing this figure here as a as sort of a love interest, and I think that will be kind of add an element of comedy to a skirmish game. I got the female pirates, and I'd like to get more of them because they actually sculpted more than just the figures you see here. And now I'm bitterly regretting not buying more of them when I did my big buy of these like 2 months ago. I like them. They're extraordinarily retro looking. Lots of epaulettes, gloves, chainsaw swords, and oddly finny looking pistols and things. Eye patches on the dames. Surprisingly, I get a lot of girls. Well, not a lot, but I mean, I get an occasional girl at the camp that I run, and I'd like to have them to have the comfort of running a female if they want to. They don't always want to, so it's there if they want to.